please join me in welcoming Chancellor Renu Khator. Thank you.
Thank
Great.
you.
Appreciate your being here.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I mean, literally, there is a place you can go on the internet, because the internet will do anything for you, where you can ask it, tell me how to pronounce Uttar Pradesh. Not bad, right?
No, it's very good. Great
Phew.
effort.
It was the thing I was worried about. The rest of this conversation is going to be easy. So, just curious, inquiring minds want to know, did you have coffee with Tom Herman this morning before you came over here?
No.
Too soon? Is it too soon to make that joke?
I actually don't drink coffee, so sorry.
That's your answer. That's your answer. Okay. None of us is going to be in, nobody in this room is really, Hans has been in this position, but just Hans. No one is going to ever get to be in the position that you're in, to be in that situation. Is it terrible? I mean, is it an honor among thieves thing? Like, you know, it's all, speaking of the Godfather, you know, it's business, it's not personal. Or is it, I'm going to go to McRaven's house and put a horse's head in his bed? In a case like that, which is it?
No, I mean, I'm a chancellor, and I understand, you know, the pros and cons. I understand the business.
Yeah.
And it's okay. I mean, I have done that for 9 years, which is in 3 more days, it will be 9 years.
I mean, you're
I'll
literally
start
coming up
my
upon,
10th.
right, yeah.
Yes, 3 more days.
Yeah.
And all I have done is, all I have learned in my life is to stay focused on your goal, is stay focused on where you are getting. And, you know, I'm a bridge player also, and which taught me a very important lesson, and that is, don't complain about the hand that has been dealt to you. Just play your very best game.
Right.
And that's what I keep doing.
And
so
you play your game, and you don't play somebody else's game.
I don't do
Right.
that. And I am staying absolutely focused. The same commitment I brought to the
Right.
table 9 years ago, I am staying focused on that. We are building an absolutely nationally competitive, nationally relevant program, whether it's athletic or academic, and
Yeah.
I'll continue to do whatever
And that's
it
all. And
takes.
that's all you're concerned about. So
Yes.
whether it's on the question of the football coach, or in a sort of more mundane fashion, UT's desire to, you know, like Hitler invading Poland, you know, come to Houston. Sorry, Barry. You don't worry about that stuff. I mean, you're actually, you know, UT and A&M, they'll do them. You do you. Right? Nobody worries about. You just worry about yourself.
I don't say I don't worry about them, because, you know, you need to know your environment, you need to know your changing landscape, and you need to know what are the challenges that could come upon you, some that are known, some that may not be known.
Yeah.
But then within that environment, you make your best judgment and stay focused on where your goal is, and continue to push your organization
Right.
forward. And I think that's what gives me the best gratification, and that's what I have been doing and will continue to do.
So you come to Austin. I mean, I know you came because we asked, but I know that you'll come to Austin a number of times over the course of the session, because part of being the chancellor of the system, you are the lobbyist in chief, in essence, for the.
I'm here every week.
Right. So when you come, are you coming on behalf of the University of Houston, or are you coming on behalf of higher ed in a general sense? Are there areas of, I mean, surely there are areas of alignment between yourself and your colleagues as chancellors?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, last year I was chairman of American Council on Education,
Indeed.
which is the largest body. So I have been a spokesperson for higher education
Right.
in the federal level and
Yeah.
at the state level too. You know, I think I bring a perspective which is very global, which is very, very different, and it would not do anybody any service if I didn't bring that perspective to,
Right.
to the
You
table.
can,
So-
the fact is, you can help the UT and the A&M systems, for instance,
What?
thinking about the world going forward.
Well, I think I can provide the feedback to the state, to the legislators, on a dimension that is larger than the state. You know, there's a
Right.
whole national landscape, there's a whole
Global landscape,
environment
right.
in which we operate. And I keep my eyes on all of that, is just because, you know, I'm a product of 2 different countries' education system. That's one.
Right.
We at the University of Houston serve, you know, students from 140 plus countries. and it's
Exceedingly
a-
diverse student body. Right.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and Houston is such an incredibly international city to begin with, so it makes sense and it's very logical for me to have focus there. So do I speak for higher education? Of course, that's my passion.
Yeah.
University of Houston, that's my passion too. So I speak on both, but if anybody ever wants me to talk about Houston, you know, I've been now 9 years invested in Houston. I didn't think that when I came to Houston.
Right.
But now I feel pretty much Houstonian, so I'll speak on behalf of Houston's issues if
Right.
asked about the feedback.
Well, so let's speak on behalf of Houston's and the University of Houston as it relates, again, heading into a legislative session, gavelled in earlier this week, as we said. We have a not very good budget.
Yes.
We have been told this repeatedly over the last couple of days, and the reality of a not very good budget in the state of Texas is that most of the dollars that are in the budget, even if it's not very good, are spoken for going in the door. There aren't many places to cut. Higher ed, as part of the overall education budget, is actually a place where they can take some cuts out, and if it's $6 billion or more in this next session, aren't you expecting to be disappointed from an appropriation standpoint?
Well, see, this is my 5th session here, and we have gone through a session where we had very tight budget as well.
Right.
And from that experience, and even knowing now, because I keep meeting with several members of the legislature frequently, and I think they have really strong challenge, no doubt. When the budget is tight, there's a totally different kind of challenge that you face, but they do understand the value of higher education, and it's not for today. It's for tomorrow.
You think, let me stop it. You said you think they understand the value of higher education. Can you give me evidence of that? Because what I've seen over the years, Chancellor, is I've seen the state share of funding of higher education decline significantly. Every time you all step up and say, we'd like to ask for a modest increase in tuition, everybody over there barks at you like a pit bull. You're being told all the time that you don't spend the money you're being given now efficiently. Why should we give you more? You're admitting people you shouldn't admit. Your graduation rates stink. What are they telling you that gives you a reason to think they think you're doing a good job?
Well, so here, you put me in a very interesting position where I'm actually defending the other side, which is when the time comes, of course, I'm going to complain about it.
I think this is the old Bum Phillips line. He can take their guys and beat your guys, right, or something. So go ahead and do that.
No, I mean, I think, I do believe they understand because, they are product of higher education. Their children are going to institutions. I think they do understand challenge. But the cause or the goal, what we share is very common, which is how do we provide affordable access to the next generation, because without that we have no future. They understand that, we understand that. Now you asked for evidence. Well, I can give you from 2009, that was my first session for the tier 1 legislation, to the Texas grants, to now the governor's GURI, which is a governor's initiative to hire more members of the National Academy.
Indeed.
And also what legislature did the last session, there were so many projects funded. I mean, I'm very grateful for every single cent and penny.
You feel positive about it?
Yeah. I absolutely do. I do understand they have challenges. I mean, we all want quality of life. Education is a very important piece of that quality of life, but it's not everything. So I understand and appreciate the challenges that legislators feel, but I feel very good and very confident, very optimistic that they will make the choices based on all of the information they have and based on what of the case we make and the information we give them.
Right.
And if you compare Texas against all other states in the country, our tuition is low and our contribution from the state is at a pretty decent level.
You believe, Chancellor, that our tuition is low? I understand that you're making a fact-based comparison, but do you think the perception of the affordability of higher ed in Texas aligns with what you just said? Because in fact, again, if you go up the street, you ask the Lieutenant Governor, who has been very loud on this subject, or if you ask either Chairman Seliger or Chairman Zerwas, I'm not sure that they think that higher ed in Texas is such a bargain.
Right. Well, I hear it all the time, too, from our students who can't afford it, and which is a true thing. So the affordability is one thing, and how do you do in comparison to their national peers? That's another thing. If you look nationally, we definitely are in the bottom 1/3, in terms of affordability. Now, we do offer...
In the positive sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So we do offer a $10,000 degree, for instance. There are some students who are enrolled in it. So it's not that we don't. We also have Cougar Promise. All systems have it. I mean, we all of us.
Where you can lock in your tuition?
Well, no, that's a different one. But there's the program Cougar Promise is where if your family income is below a certain threshold, then we don't charge actually any tuition. We have about 1,200 students.
Just come.
Right. We have 1,200 students who are going through that program right now.
Right.
Now, so the perception of affordability, absolutely, I understand. Then there are a lot of people. I mean, yesterday's news, and they said in Houston the poverty level really is stark in some areas. So I totally understand that the higher education is out of reach for people. So we have to do, higher education community has to do whatever it can to try to control the cost, bring it down. But if you look at it in the overall scheme, because we hire our professors, we hire our staff, we hire everybody from the same national market. You're not hiring from, within Texas or within market because that's your environment.
And you got to pay competitively if you want good people.
Otherwise, you're going to lose talent.
As in any industry.
So if
right?
you look at it from that angle, Texas's tuition, of course, it's not the cheapest, but it's not really all that much. But I often, sometimes jokingly though, I try to say to people, you try to see the value of public education degree for public education and see what the average cost is. And then you try to see what the average cost of a wedding is. I mean, the education cost of 4-year degrees is still cheaper than the average cost of wedding.
If you do a decent wedding, right?
This is going to last you lifetime, the degree, right? We
right.
don't know about the wedding, right? So,
not so much.
I mean, you just never know. So
right.
my point here is what I fear, that yes, affordability is very important. It's very important for us, especially knowing the kind of students who are coming to University of Houston. I mean, a lot of them just absolutely cannot afford it.
And at the same time, Chancellor, you say that it costs something, not inconsiderable amount, to do this job properly. So do you go up the street and say with a straight face and a song in your step to the Lieutenant Governor, yes, we need to increase tuition?
No, because we haven't increased tuition that much. At least we don't think we can, even from market.
But even a modest increase is objected to. Right?
It is objected to. I think questions should be asked, and that's what they are asked. And we are supposed to explain. After all, we are in public service, and we are accountable to the public, and we should explain, even if it's 1%, 2%, whatever, why you're raising, what are you going to do with that money? So I totally get that.
Yeah.
And our market, I mean, even if there were no regulations, and if you ask about, given the market, can we raise tuition really the way it was raised several years ago? We just can't, because our students just can't afford it. So
right. Even in an era of deregulated tuition, you understand there have to be some limits on what you can do.
We just cannot raise, because otherwise you're going to lose your market, you're going to lose your product.
Right.
And what worries me a little bit, Evan, is there's a sticker price, of course, then we have a lot of these programs and scholarships, that go to students and all that. We try to make it very affordable. We are right now, I mean, next week, we are going to kick off a $1 billion campaign, capital campaign for the University of Houston just next week. Why? Because we know the state will do what it can, but we have to do what we can.
Well, you can't help but go raise money privately to augment, right?
Exactly.
So what's the $1 billion going to go to?
A lot of scholarships, lots of endowment. There are facilities. They're just all around, from sciences to arts to athletics. I mean, everything. Because I believe in comprehensive, overall, even excellence. But I was just telling you what I worry about. I worry about rhetoric. Rhetoric that higher education is not important. Rhetoric that you can do without higher education. Sometimes rhetoric can be worse than the reality.
Whose rhetoric? Call out the people who are saying that.
No, I mean, in general, there are a lot of blogs, a lot of,
Up here?
No, I'm not saying up here. I'm talking nationally.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily in Texas.
Yeah.
But people question, is a college degree worth it? And what I say is, people, those elite who are going to send their kids, who know the value of college education, they're going to send their kids anyway. Those kids are going. So who is going to get impacted from that kind of rhetoric? These are the kids who are sitting at the fence thinking, should I go to college, should I not? And they are the ones who will benefit the most from a degree.
And yet they're being given permission not to go.
Rhetoric is giving them that permission. So I worry a little bit about that rhetoric, because that's not what I hear when I go to other countries.
Right.
I mean, I'm from India. When I go to India, I don't hear that college degree is not important. People are ready to sacrifice. They're ready to do whatever it is.
That's the default, right? That's the default.
That's the default.
Right. So let me come back to the budget. So you're going to, again, find yourself, higher ed institutionally is going to find itself in a situation in which you are competing with other priorities for the few dollars available. Can you make an argument to the state of Texas that you ought to prioritize spending on higher ed over spending on public ed?
Well, see, again, I don't have to really make argument that way, this versus that. My job is, as a person and as a leader in higher education, to give the value, what we bring to the table.
Right.
I have never believed in putting anybody down. I have never believed in erasing anybody's line, because for overall prosperity of our state, we're going to need strong public education, and we need a strong higher education. We need a strong health, you know, so.
It's both, right?
Exactly.
Well, in fact, the lieutenant governor yesterday, when he was here, was talking about the A through F ratings of the public schools, and he made a proactive statement to anybody in the room hiring lobbyists who are intending to come to the Capitol and try to get us to undo the A through F ratings. We're going to keep it, don't bother spending the money. And what he said was, and there are higher ed people in the room, and those higher ed people in the room ought to be happy about that, because higher ed has been bearing the cost of a public ed system that doesn't work. And then those people show up at your doorstep not prepared to be educated. So his point was that public ed and higher ed actually are linked as priorities in that respect, and that maybe there isn't any advocating against public ed and for higher ed because it's all the same.
Right. It's not just linked in terms of priority. We are linked in terms of responsibility and obligation. I mean, these are our teachers. We graduate those teachers who are part of public education system teaching. So the question that I always pose to my College of Education is, what is it that we can do better to really help the public education, because it's all a pipeline.
Right.
I mean, it's not.
In the end, you're helping yourself.
Yes, exactly.
Right, yeah. So you're going to go up the street and you're going to have a set of priorities. I mean, your government affairs folks and the people in the system who are smart about this stuff, and you're smart about this stuff, will craft essentially a bulleted list of these are the things that matter to us. What are your top 3 in this session?
Well, we definitely want to make sure that higher education does not lose its focus. We want to make sure that we have had enrollment growth throughout, you know, the state and all of the 39 public institutions.
Population is exploding.
Right, and I want to make sure that that new growth is funded, because if you don't fund that, that means the existing students and their tuition is bearing the cost of the students that we have enrolled.
And when you talk about funding new growth, I mean, it's a little bit more straight line if you're talking about funding enrollment growth in the public education system. In the case of higher ed, are you talking about facilities? Are you talking about what? I mean, what does funding growth mean?
Right. Well, funding growth there's a funding formula, right?
Right.
So we're basically asking for that funding.
So this
formula.
is just simply, this is formulaic. We're just talking about the formula, nothing else.
We're talking about the formula, but then, you know, in terms of the construction, which used to be called TRBs, now it's capital construction.
Right. Which they finally acted on last time.
Exactly. So I mean, periodically that also comes to the table, because you're not going to be able to take, you know, thousands or more students without additional space, because, you know, regardless of however we talk about the online education, students come to the campus and they want that engagement, and we realize that the distractions are getting too much, and as a result, we need to make sure that we have support systems that are available on campus to students to make sure that they don't leave, they don't drop out. See, I'm coming here from the University of Houston, okay? When I came there, the college completion rate was not even 40% for 6-year graduation rate.
Right. Well, I looked up those numbers last night, so it's about 30%, little under 30% right now for 4-year?
Yes.
And it's about,
it's 51 today.
Today for 6-year.
For 6 years.
Right.
But we have a program that we started, which is called UHN4, and legislature, actually there was a lot of conversation here, and we decided to take that to the heart and just do a very strong implementation of UHN4. So 4-year, your tuition is set, you have guaranteed seats, you have every kind of support that's possible.
You're trying to get them in and out in 4 years.
In and out in 4 years. And now we have over 60% of the freshman class that is enrolled. And the students that I want to focus a little bit more on are those that are at risk, who may not graduate because they don't have the environment back home. So those students are actually disproportionately higher from the low-income families in our UHN4 program.
So what's your goal for that, and how quickly can you accomplish it?
I
remember Bill,
2 more years, and we're going to do the 4 years.
So go from 30 to what?
It's probably going to blow past 40 for sure.
You think so?
I think so.
Yeah, but Chancellor, it's so hard. I remember when Bill Powers was the president of UT Austin, and he gave in his State of the University speech, this is a couple years before he departed, I think UT's 4-year rate at that point was in the low 50s, one of the best in the state, but still in the low 50s. And he put a flag in the ground and said, I want to get to 70% in 5 years. And I thought, ha, ha, ha. You can't get to 70% in 5 years. The institutional obstacles, I mean, that's just an unrealistic, to my mind. Now, UT has made great progress in that respect, not to 70. But I remember thinking at the time, all you're doing is setting this up to fail, because there's no way you can increase from 50 to 70 in a 5-year period. There are too many institutional impediments to that. You can go up by 33% in just a couple years.
It will go up just because we have 2 years of retention data to see, because these people started enrolling in UHN4 program, they're completing 30 credit hours, and they are in a locked-in program where they are not going to be taking excessive credit hours.
Right.
So with that, just looking at those trend lines, I can see the 6-year and 4-year graduation rates is definitely
Optimistic.
going to improve.
So I'm looking at Bill Hammond because he's sitting right there. And I know that if Bill Hammond were up here, what he would ask is, yeah, but is even that good enough? Is it a victory to only get to 40% in 4 years? Is it a victory to be at 50 or even 60 in 6 years? Shouldn't we be asking more and expecting more?
Right, and so that's a very good question. Now, I come from a system where it's 99% from India.
Right.
Okay. However, there are costs to be paid for that, which is you are in a locked-in system, you are in a cohort system. Every student is taking exactly the same classes. There's no such shifting of majors.
Right.
The thing is, if we are going to have choices, if we are going to allow people to explore themselves while they are in college, whether, well, I don't like this field, actually, I actually like this field, and that's what we value. If we are going to value people coming in midlife or having left and decided college is not for me, 4 years later deciding
Right.
we want to come back, you couldn't do that in those other systems that produce 99% graduation rate. So the question is, let's make up the mind, goal, what is the goal? Providing opportunity at any point in time in your life, at any pace,
Yeah.
at any kind of flexibility, well, then there is going to be a cost associated with it.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about UT. I don't even like to compare U of H with UH downtown. Why? Because the two have such different missions.
Right.
I cannot tell UH downtown, I want you to admit any student, forget about what the admissions requirements are, whether they're prepared or not, what their calculus score is or reading score is, give them remedial education, and let them work while they are going through the college, and then tell them, wait a minute, what is your graduation rate? Well, that's not what their mission is.
This is so I know you say you don't want to compare anybody to anybody else, but I want to cite my friend Diana Natalicio, the president of
Sure.
UTEP, who years ago said to me, when I asked her about the 4-year, 6-year thing, she said, because UTEP's graduation rate is pretty low, she said, this is like taking the train. There's a local train and there's an express train. Not every kid can be on the express train. You described situation, person goes back to school later in life. They've got jobs to pay their way through school. They've got a kid at an age earlier than they expected to, and that's a complication in their lives. You should not, you should value the destination more than the journey, and so you should actually forgive us graduation rates that may take longer simply because not every kid is going to be able to go through in 4 years or even 6 years. You're saying a version of that.
I am saying, but not all institutions. So it's not necessary, just like you said just now, express train versus local train. My point is at U of H, we have, not everybody comes there as freshmen, right? So taking the freshman graduation rate as complete indicator of the entire university's performance is probably not right, because only half the students coming to the University of Houston, the main campus, are coming as freshmen.
You get
Other
a
half
lot
are
of transfers.
Other half are coming as transfers. So your 6-year graduation or 4-year graduation doesn't tell you anything what you're doing with your transfer students.
Yeah.
However, what I keep telling them is I don't want that to be an excuse for the University of Houston, because what you're doing with your freshmen in 4 and 6 years tells you pretty much as to what the culture in the institution is.
Right.
Are you really taking care of your students? So when I came 9 years ago, I heard, well, we are a commuter campus. Fine, that's good. I mean, if we are in Houston, if we are going to be in metropolitan area, we should have opportunity for students who want to stay at home and come to the university. It's a great thing. However, your culture, your mindset, your paradigm should not be a commuter, which is, I don't really care, you come in here and you leave in 3 hours. Our mindset should be, even if you step on our campus for 2 hours, you should feel special.
Yeah.
You should feel you're cared for. You should feel you're focused. So it took quite a bit. I mean, if you ask me in 9 years for the University of Houston, I would say the biggest achievement that I put the proudest achievement, which doesn't make sense to people when you talk to, but there's a reason for it. And that is, I say, is getting the chapter of the Phi Beta Kappa. The reason I say that is you never can get the chapter of Phi Beta Kappa at your institution if your culture to treat your undergraduate students is not very supportive. If it is not student-centric, it is just a signal. And when we got that, I said, okay, now I understand all the work that we have been doing for 9 years, trying to shift everything toward the students. is actually paying off and is succeeding. So I was very proud of that, and not because of the chapter itself, but because of what it indicates.
What it says about the university. Now, you mentioned, we were talking about affordability earlier, and the reality is that affordability and getting kids in and out in a timely fashion is actually linked. In some ways, one of the best ways to get a handle on affordability is to get kids in and out in 4, ideally, right?
Right.
So there's a goal in terms of linking the economics of this
Right.
and the excellence or the success and completion, right?
That's true. So every fall when freshmen come, and we get 4,400 freshmen when they
Yep.
come, I can of course call them all in a big stadium and go and tell them, welcome to the University of Houston, we're so glad to have you. But that doesn't serve the purpose. So I go visit in the first week, during the first week alone, 25 to 28 classes to cover every freshman in a much smaller setting.
Yep.
And what I go and tell them is, I said, okay, just tell me, raise your hand if you have come to the University of Houston to drop out. Not a single hand gets goes up, right? I said, but now let me tell you, take a look to your right, and they'll take a look. I said, now tell me, between 2 of you, only one is going to graduate in 6 years. And they just jaws drop. And I say, yes, unless you do something and I do something differently, we are going to be where we are, which is only half of you are going to graduate in 6 years, and that's not what we want. And that's not just University of Houston statistics.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the state. I mean, maybe the state may be 52, 53. I don't know exactly where it is.
Well, the fact is, if the best university systems are only doing 50 in 4 years, or 70 or 60 in 6 years, a lot of people are not graduating.
And
not
so
just in your place.
One of the things what I tell them is, and the reason for that is because you're going to take a lot more credit hours than you need. You need 120 credit hours. Why are you going to take 130 or 35, 36, whatever you take? I say, if you really like the University of Houston so much, I would love for you to stay here. But think about planning it out so you can take 36 more credit hours and get bachelor's and master's for the same amount of time. I say, you don't want to struggle for parking. You don't want to have to take those quizzes. Why are you doing this? Because you're wasting money, you're wasting your time, you're getting more frustrated, and I want to help you get out of college.
And by the way, selfishly, Chancellor, they're also taking up a slot that you could give to another kid. Because that's the other part of this. And again, we alluded to this earlier. The population of the state is growing very quickly, 27 million, a little bit more than 27 million today. It'll be 54 million by 2050. And it is not only growing quickly, but changing dynamically. And as you say, you are in what may be the most diverse big city in the entire country, certainly one of them. So I wonder, how does the demographic inevitability piece of this factor into what we're talking about? Educating this student population in Texas and at the University of Houston is different than it might have been 10 or 15 or 20 years ago.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we are the most ethnically balanced research university in the country.
Is there a greater challenge educating a student population that is so heavily weighted in favor of students of color in the state of Texas now?
See, students of color have just different challenges. Can they be helped to succeed? Absolutely.
Yeah.
If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be in this position.
Right.
We all know that it takes a little bit more hard work, a little bit more intensive intrusion in order to get them to succeed. However, the funding formula is all constant. It does not differentiate into that you might take a little more time, little more effort to graduate this student. I mean, if we think there's a premium and we understand that that is true, why don't you add a premium to graduating a student who is at risk? But it's not just race, it's really the socioeconomic condition.
It's as much about economics as it is about race.
Absolutely is. But it's not just financial either. I think if we think it's just the finances that make a student drop out or don't come to college, I think then we are kidding ourselves.
It's more cultural, is it not?
Oh, there are lots of different reasons. And definitely there's a cultural reason. And one of the reasons I say is about expectations too. I mean, I alluded to it earlier on saying, you just got to have expectation that the students are going to go to college. College is important. We are going to help you graduate. Because you think about me. I mean, I came to this country 18 years old, 19 barely, and no functional knowledge of English. If somebody would have drawn a box around me at that time and would have said, that's all your abilities are, whether somebody from outside or somebody from me. I mean, there were times, I am 19-year-old sitting in a master's class at Purdue University. There were times when I said, gosh, it's too hard, I can't do it. And my husband said, no, you're going to do it. You started it, you're not going to quit. People have to believe in you. So there are things that are financial, but there are also things that are cultural, but there are also things that are societal expectations.
Yeah.
I don't want us to be a society of excuses. I mean, you go and see in some of these countries, people are sitting there under tin roof, their knees joining, and they are studying very hard. Why? Because they have a dream that they are going to come to America, and that's how they're going to build their future. Well, we have kids here. How can we inspire them? How can we motivate them? And if I didn't believe that it's possible to inspire and possible to motivate and possible to help them succeed, I just don't think that I should be in my position.
Right, but you understand, I mean, you're painting a picture that makes me depressed. I mean, because the reality is, yes, I will acknowledge that all over the world there are kids under tin roofs, and here in America we have kids who are complaining that they're out of data minutes. Right? I mean, the challenge of persuading kids to lose their sense of privilege and entitlement and to kind of get with that's a big challenge. Right?
But you know what doesn't get done prior to coming to university? Universities have to take that upon themselves. It might be harder work, but we have to do it because our future depends on it. So right now in our UHN4, the 4-year fixed program, we have more students who are from lower socioeconomic conditions who are enrolled in that program.
Right, so 60%?
Right.
Yeah.
We know that if the first year, if we can get some of those kids who don't have good study habits, if we can get them for just first year and keep them and get them on the right path, we can get them to succeed, and we can get them to graduate as well. Now, there are many other things, and that's what I keep challenging my staff, the faculty, and I'm personally, I'm out there, I give my email to every freshman, simply saying that if you run into the bureaucracy, I don't want you to get frustrated about it. This is a big university.
Just come to me directly.
You just send me an email, and within 3 days, I will solve your problem. I mean, that is the promise. And they write hundreds of emails come to me. I've got a whole system set up. I said, don't get disappointed if you're not getting directly from me.
You ever regret doing that?
No, I don't.
The problem with an open door policy is people walk through the open door. I mean, if you've ever been a boss, you know that.
No, actually, sometimes it just makes me feel like, what kinds of challenges they have, because, I mean, I always talk about my favorite email in all of those things was when somebody wrote to me and saying, President, you said that you can solve my problem in 3 days. Can you please ask my girlfriend to come back? So
I didn't mean that kind of problem, right?
But those kinds of problems can be there. So my point is this, you have advisors. Yeah. One thing you can have is to tell the advisors that you're sitting in your class, in your office from 8 to 5 advising students.
Yep.
I say, I don't care about any of that. How long you were in your office, how many applications or how many cases you process. What I want to see is if you have been given 300 students to advise, what is their GPA, what's their retention? I'm looking at the outcome.
Those are your metrics.
Those are my metrics.
All right, so three quick questions before we go to our questions from the audience. So on the notion of outcome and metrics, should we be tying higher ed funding to performance? This has been a conversation at the legislature forever.
Right.
And it's in some ways you would think it makes perfect sense. You pay for performance.
Right.
So should we be tying higher ed funding in the legislature purely to outcome?
Sure. So I have believed in that, and I have supported it since 2009, my very first session.
Yep.
I totally believe in it. If you come and you see there's a performance-related funding for colleges at U of H, we do that. You just have to be careful about 2 things, and that's what I keep saying. Because if you're not careful about those 2 things, you might end up getting consequences that you do not want, or actually very negative. First one is you need to make sure that the mission is aligned with what you're expecting institutions to do. In other words, do not think that UH Downtown's performance and U of H's performance, I'm just staying within my own system, is going to be same because we have given them different missions. So you need to figure it out. Right. What is the next level of excellence for both institutions and get them, inspire them to go up there.
And then fund on that basis, right? Okay, yeah.
Second point is do not make it a redistributive policy where you're taking from have-nots and giving it to haves.
Robin Hood.
Because that will not work, because I would not support any kind of program that takes money from UH Downtown and gives it to U of H. The reason for that is if you have your metrics right, you're going to reward them for the things that you want.
Well, the fact is, what if everybody takes you at your word as a system, you administrate a system in which outcomes-based funding is the deal, and everyone's outcomes go up? Naturally, everybody's spend is going to have to go up. You can't redistribute in a system like that.
Right.
You're actually having a hope for people who don't succeed in order to fund the ones who do.
Exactly. So
Right.
you cannot have redistributive impact. If these two things, if we can just avoid these two things,
Right.
I think I am there, I'm ready. I mean,
Right.
I've done it at U of H.
Do you worry, Julia Garcia, who used to run UT Brownsville, said once I asked her about this point, and she said, well, one of the problems with outcomes-based funding, or if you tie funding to graduation rates, for instance, is if we know that our funding is going to depend upon getting kids in and out, we're going to get kids in and out.
Yep.
Doesn't mean we're going to get them educated. But what you end up doing is dumbing down the standards, and so the outcomes end up looking like they're better for the purpose of making certain that the funding stream remains in place. Do you worry that that would happen?
Well, it's the yardstick. What is your yardstick? Because what are you measuring, and that's what you're going to get the outcome. Now, when I go to my engineering, I'm not telling them, things that I am going to tell to, let's say, my College of Liberal Arts or Humanities. It's a different thing. To engineering, I'm also going to hold them accountable for their research as well as for the members of the National Academy. Because if that's what I want them to do, I will reward them appropriately and differently.
Yeah.
The thing is, we try to get a cookie cutter model for everybody, and then it ends up being redistributive. And I just don't think it serves anybody any purpose.
Okay, so we are now in month 7 with campus carry in effect. Mm-hmm. How's it going?
Luckily, touch wood, we haven't had any issues.
Yeah. Do you feel any differently about, you were not for it at the beginning?
Well, I just didn't see my police force and faculty, just didn't see any reason for it, but now that it has been implemented, other than
were you wrong in thinking that it was, I'm not looking for you to own this necessarily, but
I don't think so.
Were the concerns that you had, do you think, looking back now, legitimate given what you've seen over the last 7 months?
Well, other than dealing with anxiety, we really didn't have to deal with any other issue. So the implementation has gone really quite well, and I really thank the legislature for putting it, but also giving flexibilities around it.
That's worked out, the flexibilities worked out for you, right?
Flexibilities did work out for us,
right.
And luckily it has gone so far.
Right.
Smooth.
What I heard from a lot of people in your position in higher ed was, you talk about local control, generally speaking. This is an instance in which we as university systems or university campuses would like to have that same local control that you talk about being so awesome.
Right.
Don't tell us what to do. Let us determine it campus by campus. They let the privates do that in the case of campus carry, but not the publics. So now we have another issue on which this question has come back up, and that's SB 6, where the public universities are going to be lumped under the umbrella of this legislation, which will dictate how you treat transgender members of the community and how you regulate access to bathrooms. What is your message to the legislature, Chancellor, on that?
Well, I think their merits and demerits are going to be debated hotly here.
I'm aware.
So when we are asked for feedback, we'll provide the feedback.
I just asked.
But you asked. When we are asked, in decision making.
Do we need to role play?
So,
I'll be Dan Patrick, you be you, and I'll ask you what you think? What do
No, I don't think you can play that role well anyway.
Oh, you don't know. I'm working on my Dan Patrick right now, in fact.
No.
But seriously, do you have a point of view about this? Is this going to be a problem for you?
No, we really don't have any kind of voice from the community, official voice from the faculty or from anybody that I can bring to the table. But I think I am totally confident that people are going to debate it hotly, every aspect of it. And at the end of the day, right now there is no such law. We continue to, operate as it is, and we are a state institution. If we are, we are asked to abide by the law. The law comes to pass, then we'll figure it out how
Policy
to do it.
changes. That's it. Got it. Okay.
No,
I think that's that's a pragmatic answer. I would ordinarily say it's a dodge, but actually I kind of agree with you. I really don't think you've done just fine. All right, questions. Naturally, Bill Hammond has sprained his elbow raising his hand, so I can't even see him. But Hammond, you want to ask a question? Hammond and then Hans.
Microphone.
Yes.
But okay, Chancellor, I appreciate what you do. I would point out that actually at a lower performing campus it would be easier to get funds under the schedule because it's based on growth. But the questions are twofold. Dual credit. What are your thoughts on dual credit? Is it working properly for your institution? And what are the odds on reaching the goal of 60 by 30 by 2030.
Correct.
That's a great question. Do the dual credit, and then I want to actually tweak the 60 by 30 thing, because I think that's a good
Yeah,
one.
I do believe in dual credits. I mean, they're working out good for us. I believe in that. You can put students on the fast pace. That's good. And probably from personal experience also, I could tell you they do work, because we have two daughters. They both finished their BSMD in 6 years. A lot of dual credits.
They're both
a lot
eye
of
doctors, is that
IBs.
right?
Yeah, they're both ophthalmologists, the glaucoma. So my point is, I do believe in that, and I think if we continue to do it right, I think it'll be good. I think most of the time, yes, I don't hear issues about it. For most of the courses, they're rigorous enough. They're good enough.
Yeah. Now, the 60 by 30, of course, is the Higher Education Coordinating Board's plan. The 60 refers to 60% of Texans 25 to 34 would have some kind of higher ed credential by 2030. That's the 30 part. Hammond is good to ask that question. I want to add on to that. Do you think you can accomplish it without the state putting up something? In other words, where's the state's skin in the game on this? Are they going to give you more money to do this? Are they going to have to do something to give you an ability to get this accomplished?
Right. Well, if we keep on getting funding formula, and if we get our funding formula to where it was before the cuts of 2011, I am totally convinced that can be done. I mean, we have to see. I think I applaud coordinating board for having that kind of vision, because that's going to be important for Texas. I always talk about higher education as having dual goal, and if we lose sight of one, then the second one just gets diluted too. One of them, I look at it as a pyramid. You need to have your base very strong. In other words, you need to have enough college education population to really fuel your economy. But at the same time, you got to have the pinnacle of the pyramid, which means you got to have and aspire to be cutting edge, the best in innovation and research in the world. So you cannot just simply always just talk about just the college completion, the lowest level. You got to think about both of those axes as to how do you fund. And I think Texas has been doing a pretty good job with that. I would just simply say, stay on focus with the funding formula and funding of the new growth, and also, if possible, take us back to the previous, before the cuts of 2011, and I think we can accomplish the goal.
Good. Chancellor? Chancellor Hance? Yes, sir.
Just a quick statement. There's no one better in higher education than Renu, nationwide. She does a great job. She's good to work with. Houston's a unique university. It's different than any other university, and she really knows that, and she's so positive in working with the rest of us in higher education. And I just wanted to say that. I got to go to a conference call at 9, but thank you for the job you do for all of higher education in Texas.
Right.
Thank you, Kent.
Ordinarily, what I would say is, I would say,
You're very good.
do you have a question? But I'm going to phrase Hance's statement in the form of a question. Aren't you awesome? That's the question. So here we go. Yes.
Two-part question, from the general to the specific. As a general principle, do you think that the conversation related to higher education in this state plays excessive deference to the wishes of a perennially 5 and 7 institution with delusions of grandeur?
What are you referring to specifically? I'm not sure I understand your question.
That UT.
So are you asking if is the higher ed conversation unfairly or unnecessarily slanted more heavily in the direction of UT?
Yes, with a football-related joke in the phrasing of the question.
Okay, I'm kind of a nerd, so I didn't.
And my specific question, that was the question with phrased as a football-related joke. My specific question is, do you believe that the permanent university fund should be opened up to all of the public institutions in this, all the public universities in the state?
So I think actually within this is an interesting question. It's something we alluded to earlier, which is the degree to which the higher ed universe is aligned.
Right.
All of you. I mean, it is fair to say that you could go through an entire lifetime talking about higher ed in Texas thinking that the only two institutions are UT Austin and Texas A&M.
I don't think so.
Well, I know you don't. But you understand that actually is not an unreasonable, statement about the things. Do you have a hard time getting airtime, essentially? Right.
I don't think so. And again, see, I go back to my bridge analogy. Don't complain about the hand that is dealt to you. Just play your very best game.
Right.
So you asked a very good question, but I sort of come more from a national scene, And if I look at nationally, this is the common phenomenon in every single state.
Right.
There's a state flagship university. There's always one university that carries the flag of the state, and
Right.
everybody feels that that gets more attention than everybody else does.
Right.
I mean, it's just the natural thing. I don't worry about that at all. I don't think the word centers around UT and, or even, if you want to talk UT and A&M, I think the word centers around University of Houston. My word centers around it.
Right.
And I'm very proud of what we are doing. I'm proud of the institutions that are access providing institutions, how important a job they're doing in the state of Texas. I mean, our future depends on thousands of students who are going to these institutions, because if we don't have education for them, people who can graduate from whatever fancy schools, they're not going to have quality of life. So I don't think that. It doesn't discourage me at
Got
all.
it.
And if I want to have airtime, or if I want to have time, or if I want to have voice, I will get it.
Now the PUF funding question is not a kind of fantastical or fanciful notion, because in fact I alluded in a joking way earlier to the University of Texas's plans prospectively to go into Houston, and what came out of that conversation in part was, well, if you're going to come into Houston, then we want some of that PUF money, right? Well, wasn't that as a make good? Didn't that come up?
I just want to, and I was asked, what will you do with that money? I said, I'll buy some land in Austin and put the University of Houston flag here. No, I mean, it's just all joking. But here is the thing, though. That's what the legislators have to decide. If the education for Texas and Texans is important, where are the funds possible? What is the best use of the fund? I mean, that conversation is not something that I would do. I mean, that conversation is something that the legislators need to do. So all I am concerned about, my goal is that I have a mission, I have a commitment, I have an obligation. And also part of that obligation is of serving the students from 6 million people, greater Houston area. How do we do the best job? Because if we don't do the best job in Houston, then I think we're not serving the fourth largest city in the United States to the fullest potential possible.
Great. How's our time, okay? Mr. Janda, yes, sir.
Can you give us a quick update on the planning for the new medical school and what you need the legislature to do this session for the medical school?
Right. So the question is not starting with the medical school. It should be starting with what the need is there. Okay. So we've got a fabulous Texas Medical Center there in Houston. We are about 3 miles from Texas Medical Center, and yet there are so many communities that have no access to health care. Just adjoining to us, living in the third ward, being there all this time, I see that every day. So the question has started coming actually from the communities around us, that can the university do anything? Because we end up in emergency. We were not even thinking about, so we started thinking, can we fill a gap? Can we fill that particular gap, which is a need for primary care physicians in community-based clinics? Is it possible? So that's how we started our investigation. That's how we started looking at our research. What can we do? How can we fill that need? If we ever build a program in medical training, it's not going to be $1 billion medical college. Absolutely no. It's probably might be a $50 million a unit or a college. And that's 4 of my colleges right now are more than that. So the point is, I'm constantly keeping my people focused, the staff, faculty, focused on the thing, can you fill that need and that gap? And if you can, then we're going to move forward with it. So right now, we started a doctorate in physical therapy program. We started doctorate in nursing now at the University of Houston. We have consolidated all of our healthcare pieces together. We are starting an outpatient clinic because we have 6 clinics already on campus. And we're going to bring a
Which the community could not access, but now the community can access.
Now the community can access.
Interesting.
And we'll bring a federally qualified health clinic to the campus so that the community can actually access.
Yep.
So we are looking at those pieces. We're going to have a center for healthy communities, because what we realize is it's not just that care, but it's also a lot of preventive care, a lot of a lot of attention to obesity or drug abuse and those kinds of things where we can start to help immediately. Yeah. So these are the pieces for us. The University of Houston Health has been my big rock from 9 years ago. You can look at my inauguration speech. And I talked about 3 things: the energy, health, and the arts. And the 4th one for me was the athletics. From day one, I have said it, I do not want a mediocre
So are you
athletics
asking
program.
are you asking the legislature for any money in this session specifically dedicated to this?
I don't believe so. We don't have it in our agenda right now. But
Right.
that doesn't mean that tomorrow I may not change my mind if
Well,
I see a spot. And
Well, you understand, Chancellor, I mean, this is an interesting, and I wish we had more time to talk about this specifically, but this is an interesting conversation because, first of all, with repeal and replace-esque, whatever they're going to do in Washington, the question of the uninsured population and access to coverage in Texas is going to be upended in some ways. But then the second thing is, so many of the counties of the state are designated as health professional shortage areas by the federal government, more than
Exactly.
half of the counties in the state.
Exactly.
And there are a whole bunch of counties that have no doctors at all. This actually
Right.
could solve another problem right up the street.
Exactly. Well, that is the whole purpose. And, any kind of curriculum, any kind of program we come up with is just going to be exactly catering to that. Because this is a huge enterprise. We don't have that kind of funding. This is not something that we would do. But we would do whatever it takes to help the community. Our focus has been very, very strongly with the community. That's how University of Houston has started its existence.
Yep.
And that's where we remain very committed. And I'm very proud of our faculty in that sense. I mean, they just stay focused on that. It's not a badge of honor for them because we know if you want to build a research-based enterprise in health, it's going to be 30, 40 years by the time you can even think about it. But we know that we can do something today that helps the communities immediately.
Let's make this the last question, please. Yes, sir.
As a Cougar, past and present, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about the challenges you faced with changing that the commuter campus mentality, the challenges and one of the successes you had in making that shift. Thank you.
That's a very good question. So I think the biggest challenge comes from inside the organization. It's the inertia inside the organization or having settled with the particular kind of paradigm that that's who we are and that's all we can be. I mean, when I came here 9 years ago, I heard every excuse in the book why our graduation rate cannot be better because we serve these kinds of students, we have this. But, honestly speaking, there isn't anything wrong with the students. If there's anything that's wrong with us, we got to figure it out, how to commit to them. So I would say in terms of changing that expectation, a lot of things have helped us, and there are a lot of things that are very substantial, and there are a lot of things people might say they are just very soft side things, like wearing red on Fridays. Why is that so important? Well, it's important for me because it builds pride. And I don't know of anything anybody has accomplished without really feeling proud about it. So I want our students to give that. That's how my athletics fits in the picture because I want the students to feel they're part of something special. And that's why I'll continue to build a nationally competitive athletics program at the University of Houston. No matter what the challenges are, what the setbacks are, you just pick up the pieces and you go up again. So I think once we settle with that initial internal organizational inertia, I think now I feel really good because the faculty and the staff are leading the way. And once they start leading the way, you just enjoy the ride and just keep applauding. So I feel really very good about it. And this whole $1 billion capital campaign, when we finish it, is going to really help us.
Well, good luck. Thanks for coming. Fun to see you here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We look forward to having Chancellor Khator back again at some point in the future. Thank you all very much. Give her a big hand. Good. Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Yes, me too.